Good noon, everybody. Brent Reeves, your Director of Multicultural Affairs and International Student Services, and welcome to this first Brown Bag of October. Appreciate everybody coming out today. Getting started a couple of minutes early, but if you know my host, or my guest rather, that I'm hosting today, he likes to talk. Now, he is an attorney by profession, which of course that fits well, talking. And I was fortunate enough to be one of this young man's mentors while he was a student here. He graduated from McKendree, so he's a McKendree alumnus, 2008? Yes. Class 2008. And we spent a lot of time in my office talking. So I was like, yeah, Courtney's going to be an attorney, yeah. And plus, also too, he was a member of our world-class debating team and has won numerous accolades there. And also, I'll let him maybe talk a little bit about some of the great things he did at SLU Law School as well. So without any further ado, please give a warm Bearcat welcome for Courtney Logan, attorney.
Out of the night that covers me, black as a pit from pole to pole, I think whatever gods may be, for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody, but I'm bowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears, looms but the horrors of the shade. And yet the terrors of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how straight the gate, or how charged with punishments to scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. Every few minutes, an inner city child will take his last breath and die. And a few moments after that, another will be fitted with a new pair of handcuffs. So by the time we lay our heads on our pillows tonight, over a few thousand children will have walked off into eternity, heaven and hell as we speak, or into incarceration. And today, McKendree University, I have one question to ask you. Do you care? But I have a much tougher question to ask you. Do you care enough to do something about it? See, because trust me on one simple fact. If you do not care enough to do something about it, you do not care. And that's the problem we have in this great country that we live in. We would swear to the high heavens that we care about those who are less fortunate, those who are not so well off. But we won't spend the time on a Saturday morning to go volunteer. Or we won't spend time to take someone under our wing and mentor them. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. But I wanted to take a moment and tell you about the man that stands before you today. Growing up, I was a praying young child. I genuinely loved God. But there were times where I felt like he was mad, upset, angry, and frustrated with me. I couldn't understand how he could give me a mother who was a drug addict, who loved crack cocaine more than she loved her own children. Or the person that they told me that loved me would give me a father who was also a drug addict, but an abusive alcoholic who would beat me, my mom, and my siblings, and wouldn't even remember what happened the day after. I mean, this is the God that they told me that loved me. And he put me through so much strife. And how when my dad met my mom, he had a wife named Beverly, and my mom had a husband named Mark, and they came together and had me. You see, I am the product of chaos. And I was born into a very chaotic world. When I was about 3 or 4, the state had to step in and take me away from my parents because they felt that my parents weren't fit to have children. So they took me and they threw me in the slammer. No, I'm not referring to any prison or penitentiary, but what I'm telling you is that they put me in a place that could be much worse than prison bars. And that was foster care. Can you imagine being 3 or 4 stripped away from everything that you know and everything that you loved? I remember Christmas that year. My father came to visit me, and he brought me this little red fire truck. I still have that truck. We laughed and we played and we had a great time, and when visiting hours were over, he stood up and he told me he loved me. And he proceeded to walk out the door. How could this man tell me he loves me and leave us all at the same time? See, when you're 3 or 4, you don't understand context or circumstances. All you know is love. And I felt abandoned. And I felt like he didn't love me. Thank God for grandmothers. Shortly thereafter, my grandmother came and rescued us. The state was about to put us up for adoption. And they couldn't find a home for all 3 of us to be together. And my grandmother did not want them separated us because she believed in family. But she was a 60-year-old woman who had had a career already. She had raised her children. And now she was taking on 3 young kids. Selflessness. As the journey on, I finally got back into my father's house, and probably not the best place to be, but it was good being home nonetheless. About 8 or 9 years, when I was about 8 or 9, things got a little tougher. And I want to tell you that story. The date is September the 5th, 1997. 5 men are sitting around a table. They're smoking marijuana and they're drinking alcohol. And one of these guys come up with a great idea, so they thought. Who are we going to rob tonight? And another man chimed in, Gerald. We should rob Gerald. Now, let me give you a little background on Gerald. Gerald was 23 years old. He was a locally known drug dealer. And he was known for carrying lots of money and lots of cash and jewelry. And he drove a BMW at 23. So he was a prime target. But what those men didn't know is that while they were plotting and planning, Gerald was in my front yard. And he was with my brother, Christopher D. Price. Gerald understood the risk of his profession. And he knew that he did not want to go alone. And Chris was also a drug dealer. But Chris had the reputation for being the type of person that you just didn't mess with. So Gerald went to Chris for protection because Gerald did not want to go alone. These guys had planned all day long. It was very elaborate. They had ski masks, walkie-talkies, black attire. I mean, it was something out of a movie. And their plan was very simple. Some of the guys would go behind the house, and some would stay in the house. One guy would come out of the house when Gerald pulled up in his BMW and check and see if Gerald had the money, the drugs, or the jewelry. And if he did, they would rush him, they would rob him. No one was supposed to get hurt. But when they pulled up in Chris's truck, instead of Joe's BMW, they panicked. Everybody freaked out. No one told us Chris was going to be here. And before the guy in the house could come out and check and see whether or not Gerald had the drugs, the money, or the jewelry, they rushed him at gunpoint. Get off the car, don't move! And Gerald wouldn't stop moving. And he attempted to flee. He took off and he shot him twice. Gerald was lying on the ground, trying to crawl his way away from these men, and they grabbed him. They dragged him back across the driveway, and they threw him in the back of the truck. And they told Chris, you better not move that truck. 2 guys hopped on the back with Gerald, and 1 guy with a .357 Magnum in the cab of the truck with my brother, holding him at gunpoint. Told him to drive. Chris knew he had 2 options: fight or flight. Those men were not going to let him live that day. He knew it. So he chose a mixture of the 2. Chris was driving his truck, and he saw this car coming in the other lane. So he's driving, and then he swerved and smashed into the car, and he attempted to get out the truck. But at that moment, the gun started going off. That night, my brother Chris was found lying dead under his truck. He was shot 13 times. The autopsy revealed that 6 of those shots were fatal. And 3 of those shots would have left him paralyzed from the waist down if he would have lived. He wasn't even supposed to be there. And what's more disconcerting for me was 3 days prior, my brother had been arrested on 3 felony charges. If he had not made bail, I wouldn't even be here standing here telling you about his story. But I guess that's how it is sometimes. So my friends would say, you just pick up and you dust yourself off. But what disappointed me the most was that my brother Paul wasn't there to console me. Let's rewind a year. September the 7th, 1996. Me and my little sister are sitting in the front room, and we're playing a video game, Super Mario Bros. And we were in a program called Project Success, which is a program that was ran by SIUE for underprivileged and disadvantaged children. And they picked us up every day around 4 or 5 o'clock after school. So we were in the living room playing the video game. We were waiting for the band to pull up and blow their horn. And my brother Paul bust through the door and said, "Dad, they coming." And before we knew it, the doors were kicked down. Men were storming into my what's supposed to be safe house. And the first guy through the door with his gun drawn in my face, I'll never forget what he told me. He said, he looked around to the other guys and said, "No one told us kids were supposed to be here." My life has been filled with those little bitty fire truck moments. And sometimes it felt like a never-ending saga. It was like a bad dream repeating itself over and over and over again. But I'm grateful that I had some shining lights in my life. People, such as my football coach at East St. Louis Senior High School, Darren Sunken, who took me under his wing and would pick me up for practice. Or people like those teachers who would buy me lunch when I couldn't afford it. But there's really one person that really comes to mind when I think about those people that were there throughout my entire life. And that was my next door neighbor. His name is Herbert Felton. And Mr. Felt, he was a guy about my height, maybe a little taller, and hard-working laborer type of person. He had his own lawn mowing business, so he really didn't have a lot, but he had enough. And I remember times I would go to Mr. Felton and I would say, hey, I need some bus fare, or, I want a few dollars to go out and hang out with my friends. And there was this one day I went and knocked on Mr. Felton's door and I said, Mr. Felton, I want to go to school. My friends are hanging out on the block. I don't have bus fare. And he reached into his pocket and he pulled out a few crinkly dollars and a handful of change. And he said, is this enough? That day could have been the day that I chose the streets instead. For someone, that's exactly who you are. You're Mr. Felton in somebody's life. You are an opportunity for someone who doesn't have much to have access and a gateway to so much more. McKendree University was an asset to me. It not only prepared me for life, as far as work is concerned, but it prepared me for life socially. I am very indebted to this university, given the foundation that it's given me. And I'm very thankful to have the opportunity to be a McKendree alum. But today, I'm charging each and every one of you to do more. I want you outside of your comfort zone. Because even me, who spends time doing a lot, is not enough. But I truly believe that if we all work together, we can do a lot more. I've been lucky enough to have a lot of success, not only here at McKendree, but also in my professional career. I credit that to the many shoulders that I stand on. I don't take any credit for what I've done, because there's so many people behind me pushing me forward. I've had my debate success here at McKendree, which most people know about, but I also went on to law school to win a national championship in moot court. After law school, I became a prosecutor, where I worked for the great state of Illinois and St. Clair County, where I was able to help a lot of people. Now I'm in private practice, and I still work on behalf of the St. Clair County State's Attorney's Office. But that's not where my real work lies. My real work lies in my youth organization, New Year Youth Movement, which operates in Washington Park. I'm the president of the board of directors, where we serve underprivileged children, such as mentoring and training and development. That's where our real work lies. Our profession is only an aspect of that. I started with a question. At first it was rhetorical. This time I would like a response. Every few minutes, an inner city child will take his last breath and die. And a few moments after that, another will be fitted with a new pair of handcuffs. So So by the time we lay our heads on our pillows tonight, over a few thousand children will have walked off into eternity, heaven and hell as we speak, are into incarceration. And today, McKendree University, I have one question to ask you. Do you care? And if you care, I'd like for you to raise your hand. Thank you. I have a much, much tougher question to ask you. Do you care enough to do something about it? And if you do, I would like you to stand. 60% of our country is our youth. But our youth is 100% of our future. The statistics does not have to be as daunting as they are in the status quo. With us all working together, we can curb those numbers. But it takes work. It takes passion. It takes us being intentional about solving issues that are present in our communities. I thank you for letting me come and speak to you today. I look forward to seeing each and every one of you on the front lines of the battlefield. Thank you.
Questions, please. Questions and answers. Any thoughts about McKendree's and Courtney's background in East St. Louis, life here at McKendree, going on with SLU law? Any thoughts, any questions?
Courtney, we have programs in place through our community outreach to work in East St. Louis. What kind of help and support can we provide you in Washington Park?
Our program in Washington Park is strictly donation based. We don't have a sponsor per se. And to be honest, I mean, Rachel, my wife is here now. She will attest that many times we are pulling out of our own pocket in order to make things happen for the organization. I think some volunteers would probably be helpful. Washington Park, just like East St. Louis, is 99% African American, so they need culture. They need to experience other cultures. I'll tell you, and I write about this in my book, that culture shock is very real. When I came to McKendree, it was very tough for me. It might not look tough to everybody else because I was able to mask it so well, but it's very tough coming from a predominantly black community into a predominantly white university. And I believe we can expose our kids to more types of people before they get older. They'll be more cultured and they'll be able to interact better, and they won't see people of other races as a threat to them because they'll be able to relate to them. So I think there's many of ways that McKendree can be helpful as far as that aspect is concerned. And even if there's new programs that you're going to create, I'll definitely be interested in helping out as well. Yes, ma'am.
What programs are you do now?
With the program that I'm working with, so we do college visits. We do everything with these kids. When I say everything, we buy school uniforms. We pay bills at their house. We do mentoring. Field trips. We do everything because the problem is that their parents, we're dealing with kids whose parents might have mental retardation issues or who might not be educated themselves, so they don't know how to really take care of the kids. So we're dealing with kids who are raising themselves in most instances. So it's really, really tough. But so to be honest, it's a full wraparound type of program that we're doing. We're trying to be successful at it, but as you can imagine, there's more kids than there are workers. So it's always a strain as far as, how do we keep her balance and how do we serve the need? Because the need is great. The need is very great. Yes, ma'am.
Do you do programs on Saturdays or mostly after school, or what's going to be your key time?
Sure. It's typically Friday nights for right now. We have access. We work out of the Good Samaritan building which is in Washington Park. They give us a key. They don't charge us anything to be there. And they've literally given us free reign as long as they don't have any conflicting programs that are going on in that center. So if there's a night that it's free, we can always start something that, even if we're not doing it. Right now, it's a lack of resources and a lack of manpower that kind of stunts our growth. Yes, ma'am?
I would like to make a proposal that this Saturday at the Fall Festival in Johnstown, Lebanon, come to the art gallery and have your caricature drawn. We'll be taking donations for your organization.
Oh, thank you.
Everybody come, and if you like to draw, bring a pad of paper and you can draw caricatures. You can join me there.
Oh, thank you so much. That's awesome. Questions, comments?
Courtney, what's the age range? I'm just curious.
What's the age? Middle school? Yeah, middle school, yeah. 12 to 18.
Okay. The reason I'm asking, when I was at Marquette, I used to judge on the weekend debates, and there were middle school kids. And I know debate has been big in your life. I'm just wondering, is there a possibility of, especially this age range, because debate to me sets a foundation.
I agree.
It really does, in the sense of communicating, thinking, research, you name it, it does it all basically. Of even starting something where they're exposed to that, medium as a way of expressing and so on. Is that possible?
I guess it would be possible. I don't know, is that school-based or is it just organized?
I'm just thinking outside the
Sure,
box.
I understand, yeah.
I would even say, just start in-house and then see from there where you can link up, that sort of thing.
Okay.
And we even have, Pat's on this, Modern United Nations. I don't know if there's a possibility of bringing young people to be exposed to that. It's a way of exposing them to a view of the world that a lot of kids don't get, and I think really would open the door for a lot of people.
I'm sure, just to bounce off of that, I'm sure that you could bring them when we host the debate tournament here on campus. And
Sure.
I think it's October 17th.
I did something, matter of fact, with your group one time, young kids from East St. Louis, and we held a debate, and everyone said, "Oh, you'll never be able to do it." And I said, "Oh, yeah, let's see." And we did it, and they did a great job. You were there. They did a great job.
Something to think about. Yes, sir.
Courtney, you were a student here 10 years ago,
Hasn't been that long.
and you referred to the challenge of being an African-American student on this campus and what that was like, and you were able to mask your feelings so we didn't know, some of us, really what was going on with you and for you. Talk to us a little bit about, from an institutional standpoint, what more might we do as an organization to support such African-American students, and how we might be of better service. You'd be pleased to know that the number of students we have who are minority students on this campus has grown since you've been here, and I suspect that will continue, or will become a smaller institution. So what advice would you give to your alma mater to be more effective?
Sure. I think it always starts in the faculty. I think it's very important that minority students see teachers that look like them. It's important. I mean, it matters. It does matter. I think that's a place to start. At least to facilitate the discussion of how to make that better. Because if there's not many people for you to go to talk to, that you relate to, or that might have a background such as yours, or I understand there might be a level of fear or anxiety of going to somebody who's white, telling them about dad who's a drug addict, or mom who's an alcoholic, or dad, brother that's on the block, and I'm stressed out and I don't know what's going on, so I can't do my schoolwork. There might be a barrier there that the average student might not be able to overcome. So they fill out, or they flunk out, or they drop out because they got to go back home to help, and only if there was somebody to talk to. And sometimes it's really that easy. And I'll tell you a story. It's unrelated, but it's kind of the same thing. My brother Paul, the one who was arrested in the drug raid, I went to him and I said, I had an opportunity to interview him for a book. And I said, what would you tell, he's 40-something years old now. I said, what would you tell your 18-year-old self now that you're 40 years old, been through prison and people shooting at you, all this stuff? What would you go back and tell you? And what would you go back and tell Chris? Because you're his older brother. What would you tell him? He said, well, Courtney, nobody never came to me and talked to me about college. He said, if somebody would just told me what it was, I would have went. Dad didn't go. Mom didn't go. Grandma didn't go. So mentorship is important, even in the university context, is very important. And I know Brent is only, he can only handle so much. You know, when I was here, I ran into him a lot, he had to tell you. And I had a lot of issues. A lot of problems. It looked clean, but it was dirty. There was a lot of things going on in my life. So that, from an institutional standpoint, I think that's a really good place to start. I think it's really, really important. I mean, everybody knows that diversity is the way of the future. I mean, law firms are now, companies are telling law firms, if you don't have diverse people, you can't have our business. I mean, it's a #1 priority in the world now. So that's my suggestion.
I'd also like to interject and introduce also Rachel Logan, Rachel Witcher Logan, and she's also a McHenry alum. They met here, found love, and I think maybe also Rachel can share in that answer for you, Dr. Dennis, as well. So.
Definitely. I remember vividly, I had a breakdown moment, I think it was my freshman year, and I remember sitting on a curb, and I'm like, what am I doing here? Because I didn't feel like I fit in. But I think having like organizations like BSO and having that a group of people that look like me, that can relate to me, help. I think having the dialogue about some of the issues of transitioning from home to college, and coming to a college where no one looks like you, you've never seen this environment before, no one in your family been in college, so they can't relate to the things and the issues and pressures of being in college. So just having that conversation with the students, and then having support like the BSO will be beneficial. Because yeah, I mean, it is a culture shock. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. My education, I went to Cahokia School District, and I feel like I was underprepared for the level of expectations here. So maybe bridging a gap between high school to college for some students may be beneficial, and then having that conversation of what college is like, some of the pressures and the feelings that they might have will be beneficial as well.
I'd like to add, Rachel also went to the SLU, and she has a master's degree in social work as well.
And I guess I'll add on to what Rachel just said. I mean, I also felt like I was unprepared for college. And I failed math and English my first semester being here. Literally, I had the lowest GPA on the football team. And I know I knew I was a smart person. But me and her now understand that it's not that we're not smart people, it's an indictment on the system. The system, the education system failed me. The education system failed my life. So it wasn't about us as people, it was about us being different, coming from an environment or a school district that just didn't have us ready for school. So I definitely took advantage of the study skills courses and different things like that, and I got back up to speed. So I think you have the resources that are available, that are needed. I think we need to probably push more people into using them, because there's a stigma attached to them. Oh, you got to go get right now because you're learning right. Well, no, you just don't know all of the concepts. And if you know all the concepts, you can write. But they were very beneficial to me, and it got me up to speed because I was in a world of trouble when I got here, and I was very concerned, but I knew I wasn't going home. So I worked late nights and long days in order to get to a place where my writing was proficient and I can do the math in a way that was pleasing to the professor. So it is real. It is real. You might not hear about it from your students, but this is happening probably right now in your classrooms. It's happening, I'm telling you.
But where did you find that that concept within yourself to want to work hard, to want to move into a different kind of situation, to experience different things? What was unique about you? Your book certainly credits your grandmother for an awful lot of that, and as being a great role model and a stimulator. Are there other things that you kind of reflect on that say, you know, this may be different somehow, or good luck, good fortune?
You know, I hate to throw it all on dumb luck, and I hate to give credit to all to one person, because I think it's a mixture of all of those things. For me, at a very young age, I looked at my situation and I knew it wasn't normal. I knew that men are not supposed to beat women. I knew that people are not supposed to kick down your door with guns because people are selling drugs. I also knew that I didn't want to be an absentee parent because I'm on a drug hop or a drug run, whatever it was. So for me, I took all of those negative things in my life and I turned them into positive motivation in order to push me forward. I just looked at all the bad stuff around me and I was like, well, I don't want to do that, I don't want to do that, I don't want to be like those people. And there were a few people that were in my life that were very successful people. They had went off to college, or they had great careers, and I had my teachers and my people at school in order to look up to. So I don't know what that one thing is. I do believe in personal responsibility, regardless of where we grew up, what community we're from. We have to, as individuals, we have to make our own choices. We have to. I don't care what the system is. I don't care if you're privileged, underprivileged. I don't care what that is. There is a level of that that's only you. The guy chooses to go sell drugs. Now, we might have an explanation of how he got there, but he still made the choice to do it. And that's not justifiable, right? So there's still that internal desire to want to be better that we can't bottle up in a bottle and put in a pill and give to people. And I get that question. You can imagine I get that question very, very frequently. And, you know, I've had some soul searching to do myself in order to answer that question. But it really is a mixture of so many different elements. And being in the right place at the right time. I've left situations moments before the bullets start flying through the air.
One last question, then I'll try to restrain myself. But, because there's so many faculty in the room and some people who are going into teaching, you spoke lovingly about a third grade teacher, I believe, if I remember correctly, and as having an influence on your life. And it's, your description of that was very poignant for me, because I believe that there are those aha moments, and those people, whether it's in grade school or the university level. Can you just describe for the group a little bit what happened to you with that particular teacher?
Sure. I believe teachers are a godsend, because teachers are more than educators. And if you are going into education, I need you to know that you are going to social work, you're going into family work, you're going into kids' work, you're going into God's work, spiritual work. Teachers are not just educators. And I was lucky enough to have teachers throughout my entire educational career who sprinkled things into my life that pushed me way, way farther than some of my friends. And I think Dr. Dennis has talked about, her name was Jane James. Jane James. And when I was in elementary school, she came to me and she said, "You're different. You're not like the others. You're special. You have something more in you. I don't need you to act like that. You can't be like that. You can't do this. You can't go like that. You need to be better. No, you have to be more than better. You need to be the best. You need to be the best at all times." She saw something in me that I couldn't even see in myself. She had told me words I had never heard before in my life. She had took me and put me in a college readiness program in 3rd grade because she said, "You are better. We're going to get you the resources. You're not going to," she told me when I was young, she said, "You're not going to go to Eastside. We're going to send you to Altoff, even if I got paid for it." She took a vested interest in me, in my future. And in return to her, I made sure it wasn't a waste of time. So I worked harder. I spent more time. It's very respectful. Because I knew that if I got in trouble in 5th grade or 4th grade, my teachers are going to go talk to her. And I didn't want to let her down. I I didn't want to let her down because she told me I was something. I didn't know what that was, but it was something. Kids where I'm from grow up surrounded by nothing. Pothole after pothole, burnt out building after burnt out building, drug house after drug house, murder after murder, rape after rape, robbery after robbery. Their families don't look like much. They haven't accomplished much. So there's really not many people to speak into their lives and to cultivate them as people. So where do they get it from? They go to school. But what happens when you go to school and the teacher tells you you're nothing? You'll never be nothing. It reinforces everything that they see, everything that they hear, and everything that they do when they're not at school. But we expect our kids to be successful. But we've fed them a cocktail of disaster. Teachers are very important. And if it wasn't for teachers, I write pages and pages about my teachers. If it wasn't for teachers, I don't know where I would be. I don't know where I would be. And I'm very grateful. Yes, ma'am.
Courtney, I don't know you, but I do believe that you are truly a shining star. And on behalf of McKendree, too, I want you to know that McKendree has been a shining star. I know there are many in here, but I've only been here for 1 year.
Yes, ma'am.
And I wrote an engagement grant, a faculty engagement grant, and I got it, to my surprise. And the grant was to mentor and help 15 young men at Lincoln Middle School in East St. Louis. And I was one of those that went on Saturday during the week and everything for them. And I would not have been able to do that if I had not received that grant. And that money helped all of the efforts that we did for that entire, I guess it was about 6 months with those 15 young men, who I am still in touch with, although I don't have the money, any more money. But it was an awesome, awesome thing that McKendree did. And I'm not even sure they know they did it, you know? There 15 young men in East St. Louis, and they were mentored by their principal, other people, and all of us. We had so many opportunities for them that year and last year. And I want you to know that you asked the question, do you care? You also said that you have to have someone who cares and actually do something. And I want you to know that I'm here to do something, not only in the community, but also for McKendree, and to make sure that they are aware. You asked, there was also, and I'm gonna stop talking, there was also one other thing, you know, you can't do something for that you do not know.
That's true. I agree.
And I do believe that there is still some growing to do with what is needed, and I thank Dr. Dennis for asking that question. What is actually needed? Well, I'm hoping they're talking and speaking to the right people to know what is needed. And then even more will be done, and you are definitely one of those that he's speaking to. And I'm hoping that conversation goes farther than just this event.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I'm definitely looking forward to being a part of the discussion.
We have about 5 more minutes, and then we'll leave Courtney a little time in order to, he has some of his books here, if you'd like to maybe get them autographed. Courtney, how much are we going to?
$15. They're typically 20, but McKendree's.
McKendree discount, so a few more questions we can still field, 2 or 3 more.
I want to ask, will you send out your contact information?
Yes.
Some of us here from the School of Education, Pam, that just spoke up from the School of Education. And what I would like to discuss with you in the future with more time is, as a faculty member within the School of Ed, we don't have a very colorful student population. And so the question is what needs to be done at the middle school, high school, with those students to encourage them to want to pursue a degree in education and to become teachers. And that's what I would be interested in pursuing. I'm sure Pam down there would too. But if you would send us somehow distribute, get us an email with your contact information.
It's interesting you say that. I spoke this morning at Clark Middle School down in St. Louis, and I had three out of 10 students tell me they want to be teachers. But let me tell you what the problem is, and I'm gonna give you my answer. My first day at McKendree, we had an orientation where they shuffle you through the classroom, and you go here, and you take the picture, and you do this stuff. Everybody knows the shuffle, right? We did the McKendree shuffle. So we got into this room, and one guy, it was a guy talking, I don't remember exactly who it was. He said, "How many people in here have AP credit?" Everybody raised their hand, except me. I had no idea what it was. I didn't have a clue what that was. Our kids start so far behind the 8 ball that most of them never have an opportunity to catch up. If we can't fix our problem in our primary schools, your class will forever look like what they do. Because we can't even get them to a point where we can get them here. And if we can get them to the point, we still got a problem getting them through the door. Then we get them through the door, it's a problem keeping them here. My older brother came here. I don't know if most people know this. He'd probably kill me if I say this. But he didn't make it past the first year. He didn't make it past the first year. Because all the issues he had going on at home and blah, 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 on and on. It's always a story and a list, and we all have one. But we have to find a way to retain. But we got to get them to a point where they can even get here. So I got 3 kids in middle school that say they want to be teachers. But will they have the GPA when it's time to apply? Will they know about the ACT? Will they be prepared to take the ACT? I wasn't. I scored like an 18, and I didn't have any preparation. I didn't even know what it was until they told me like a week before we were going to take it next week. When everybody else is preparing for it, and they're studying for it. That's how they get the good grades and the big scores on them. So now they don't have to pay for college like I do. They don't have the loan debt. You see, I mean, it's literally, I talk about it in the book, but I mean, literally, it starts very early. And most of us are left behind pretty far.
Time for about one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
I like to ask, how do you handle being such like a successful black man and working in like a predominantly white career, but also like staying true to yourself and not kind of coming off as like a sellout just because you want better for your life? You understand? Like, how do you kind of juggle the mix?
Here's the honest truth, all right? And most people say, when you say honest, they probably talk a lot. The truth is you have to stay true to yourself regardless of what everybody else thinks, okay? So when I go back to the hood, I go to the block, I go to the barbershop, wherever I go, I talk white now. I'm different. You're not like us. Oh, you tripping, or you. But if I go to the law firm and I put my headphones in and walk around the law firm, oh, you acting black. You're not like us. So it's really tough to be an African American in a legal profession or whatever career you want to be in, because there's really more than double standard. There's a lot of different types of standards. See, because I have to, in order not to get shot when I go to the hood, I have to portray myself in a certain manner. I can't walk through the hood with a suit on. I have to put my jeans and my hoodie on in order to be safe. I have to live by street law when I'm in the streets. And I have to live by law firm life when I'm in the law firm. But I can't talk to a judge like I'm gonna talk to Pookie on the corner. But I'm gonna talk to Pookie on the corner so he don't think I'm some rich guy with a lot of money in my pocket, so he won't put a bullet in my head. So unfortunately, it's not fair. But what I've learned is life is not about fairness. When you're a black man or a black woman or Asian, when you're different than the majority, it's not about fairness. It's about getting what you can out of life and helping other people at the same time. And in order for me to be successful at the law firm, I have to put my nice suit on. I have to go say, hey, Jim, how you doing? Blah, 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 blah. And in order to be able to go home and hang out and have a good time, I have to still be able to put my hoodie on and not use big words. And that's just a life. Those are the cards we're dealt. We don't get to choose. None of us get to choose where we grow up, what color we are, what race we don't get to choose those things. So it's not fair, but is it supposed to be? I don't think it's supposed to be. I think we're all made perfect. So thank you guys. I really appreciate it.
Real quick question.
As a tribute to Courtney, that all of us we're proud to have been part of this McKendree experience, get to stand up and be recognized so that we're recognizing him.
Yeah,
And you're part of McKendree experience, stand up.
come on, let's in this room. There we go. And maybe those of you who are standing might be the first in line to grab one of his books if you haven't already. So